This is the story of Linda Donaldson. It was 1988, and Linda Donaldson lived in Canning Street, in the city of Liverpool's main red light district. Every night, women could be seen dressed up as they hung around on the streets of Liverpool, looking for clients who would drive and stop nearby. Many of the women were on the streets for one reason, to fuel a substance addiction, and had turned to sex work as a way of funding their needs. Linda Donaldson was just one of them. She was well liked among her friends. A number of women and clients spoke kindly of Linda. Her mother had been 15 when she had given birth to Linda. Her father was from another country, and she never really saw him growing up. She was married at 18, and when the relationship fell apart, in the midst of a crushing substance addiction, Linda fell into sex work to fund her habit. She was brought up by her grandmother. She was a very friendly, loving person. She had a big heart and got on with everyone around her. Linda regularly visited a clinic in the local area where she could get herself checked, also sourced free condoms and fresh substance sharps. Linda was very aware that she had neighbours and she did not want to offend anyone. So on an evening she would take punters down a back alley and along back Canning Street to her home. She had previously been on the Kilroy show.
Police in Liverpool wanted us to walk on a deserted street in front of the cathedral, and then they thought about it a bit more and they put us back into the residential area. When someone's got kids around me, I wouldn't dream of chatting up a man right in front of kids. Not many girls will.
It was a talk show on the TV, and they were discussing sex work at the time. It was the 17th of October 1988, and sometime before 10 p.m, Linda was seen buying groceries in a local store before heading home to feed her pets. Linda just loved her animals. She had a dog and 3 cats, strays, that she'd brought home, where she would love and attend to them. They gave her so much joy. Linda's flatmate said that Linda left their Liverpool flat on Canning Street at about 11 p.m. that night, waiting in her usual spot on Canning Street for the first man to arrive. Linda was distinctive as she always wore black. She had many regular men who drove by to see her, and not every man wanted sex. Some just wanted her time, her attention, her affection. Linda was spotted by a couple of policemen that night as they drove by and regularly drove past just to make sure everyone was okay. That night, Linda's colleagues had seen her with a number of men. Linda went by the name of Tracy when she was at work on the streets. At 11:30 that night, one of Linda's colleagues was approached by a man that made her feel so uneasy. The man had a large bag with him that clanked loudly as he put it down next to him. Something made her feel so uneasy as he asked her if he could take her somewhere more quiet. He soon got the message and left without what he had come for. As Linda stood there, her friend decided to call it a night and hailed a cab, leaving Linda stood waiting for her next man to arrive. As her friend got into the taxi, she looked back and saw Linda walking towards a dark car that seemed to be stopping near back Canning Street. No one else ever saw Linda alive again. 4 hours later, at around 5:45, 6 a.m, over 18 miles away, a maroon Ford Granada Mark II was seen parked in Winnick Lane near Lee. Then, about lunchtime, an elderly couple who pulled off the M6 motorway at junction 22 decided to park in the same place that the maroon car had been seen earlier that day. They were travelling up to see family in the Pennines and needed to just stretch their legs. And as they walked a few metres ahead, the husband said to his wife, "Is that a body down there?" He went to investigate, coming back and saying, "Oh no, oh my gosh, it's a body." The body had been found naked and had been mutilated. The man stayed nearby, telling his wife to go phone the police. The police arrived and they cordoned off the area to preserve the scene, and as forensics arrived, it was determined that the body was a female in her 30s to 40s. The mutilation carried out by her killer horrified officers called to the scene. She was killed by 2 wounds to the back, yet, even when dead, the knife was plunged 8 times into Linda's body. Decapitation had been attempted, her breasts had been severed, her body washed to remove forensic evidence, and Linda's clothes, black miniskirt, black jacket, studded belt and ankle boots were all missing and never found. They also felt that where she was found was not where she'd been murdered, as there was no evidence to suggest a struggle exactly where she was found. Meanwhile, back in Canning Street, Linda's flatmate had become concerned. She'd woken up and realised that Linda had not returned home. And doing the kind of work that they did, they were always on it. They always looked out for each other, and she knew something was wrong. She called the police to report Linda missing. Now, police were unable to determine where this body had been murdered, who it was, or where the belongings were, as the body was found with no clothes or belongings. But it was eventually discovered that the body did belong to Linda, causing concern among the girls as they continued to wait for men, not knowing if they would be next. But due to the overwhelming need for substance, they felt they had no choice and continued to work the streets. Police asked people to come forwards with information to help find this suspect, asking wives and girlfriends if they'd seen any of their men discarding or burning of any clothes, and if they thought anything was unusual, maybe just to call in. Linda Donaldson's body had been discovered with multiple stab wounds in a field off Winnick Lane in Loughton, Wigan. A £50,000 reward remained in place for information leading to the arrest of her killer. Despite the case being featured on the BBC Crime Watch television show, no one came forward with any significant leads, and as the years passed, it was as if Linda Donaldson and her family would never get justice. Years later, Martin Bottomley from the Greater Manchester Police's Cold Case Unit said, "The murder of Linda shocked everyone who worked on it. She didn't have the best start in life, and through no fault of her own, was forced into a lifestyle she would never have chosen for herself. She ended up losing her life in the most horrific of circumstances, and her killer had never been found." Police had appealed for anyone who lived in the Merseyside or Loughton areas at the time who recalled anything suspicious to come forward. And there were so many unanswered questions. But we believe there are people out there who know what happened to her, he said, who maybe have come across her belongings and to come forward. The person who killed Linda, a vulnerable woman whose day-to-day existence slipped under the radar, has never been caught, but it is feared that she may be a victim to one of Britain's few serial killers who have never been unmasked. But christened by some as the East Lancashire Ripper, it is believed that he prowled the patchwork of communities that straddled the Greater Manchester Merseyside border, and to some it is plausible that this same man took Linda's life savagely in 1988 may also have killed other SEX workers. But in 1996, police initiated Operation Enigma, set up to identify similarities between the murders of 207 women. The police said that they thought Linda Donaldson had been picked up, murdered and her body mutilated, and had been dumped in the location where she was found. They said that they felt that she'd been murdered elsewhere and then dumped in the ditch. However, the police said that they had no idea where she'd been murdered, but stated that it was quite clear that the murderer had had plenty of room to carry out the murder, and it was likely that the place where she had been murdered was somewhere between Liverpool and Winnick Lane. Police added that they thought the murderer had also had plenty of light and had taken their time over it. The police said that they were also trying to trace the murder weapon, which they said they thought was a heavy bladed knife, which was at least 8 inches long. It was noted that early on the 17th of October 1988, the day before Linda Donaldson was found, there had been an airing of a television show called Jack the Ripper, a dramatisation starring the famous actor Michael Caine, which took place 100 years after Jack the Ripper murders in London, and it was speculated that this programme had prompted someone to carry out a similar murder, resulting in Linda Donaldson's murder. The type of man who could do this to another human defies description. The police said that they'd interviewed 415 curb crawlers, identified 103 of Linda Donaldson's former clients, spoken to just under 10,000 people, and examined 6,000 cars during their investigation. The police noted that one of the problems with the investigation was the fact that many of the men that picked up SEX workers in the red light district came from outside of Merseyside. The police later arrested a person inside Liverpool Magistrates Court in relation to her murder, but he was later released without charge. They said that they were also interested in speaking to an anonymous caller that called in the incident room on Sunday night the 6th of November 1988, but then rang off. Despite numerous inquiries, repeated appeals for information, and new forensic techniques developed in the intervening 30 years, the killer has never been found. Inquiries at the time established that Linda's body had been moved to the ditch after her death, but the location of the murder has never been verified. 3 decades on, specialist officers are renewing their appeal for information, but still, to this day, no one knows who murdered this woman, and no one has ever been convicted.